And now for our next presenter, Frank Voehl. Frank is an expert in the application of business improvement tools and innovation methods to public and private organizations, including cities, countries, community government, and nonprofit organizations. He is also a noted author and series editor of over 30 books and hundreds of business management and improvement articles, along with technical papers. He's also provided input on the original design of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award and facilitated its crossover to other nations and regions, including the Bahamas, South America, Europe, and the Czech Republic. Frank's specialties include he's a certified Six Sigma application expert, JUSC, lifetime master instructor, Lean Six Sigma Grandmaster Black Belt, ISO 9000 lead auditor, TQM quality counselor and advisor, Crosby Quality College, certified management consultant. So, I give you, without further ado, Frank Voehl.
Thank you very much, Rick, for the introduction. We're here to talk about change management today, specifically the change management toolkit that we've developed over the past 5 to 10 years. Thank you very much, Rick, for the introduction. We're here to talk about change management today, specifically the change management toolkit that we've developed over the past 5 to 10 years. And we're offering the toolkit as a way of explaining how the subject of change management can be mastered, can be understood, and most importantly, can be implemented within your organizations. We have 4 objectives that we'd like to cover with you. Okay, objective 1 is we'd like to discuss the reasons why within your organizational frameworks managing change is so complex, and why over 90% of the time the change management process, no matter whose model is being used, winds up failing. The second thing we'd like to review are some dynamics that underlie this whole change process. So how can we begin to understand the underlying forces behind change management? The third objective is to examine some change management models. Specifically, there's a half a dozen change management models out of the 50 or more models out there that we found could be validated and verified over time. So we'll review those models, and then we'll collapse those models into one change management framework. So that's the basic objectives that we'd like to do today and cover. Okay, a word association game to get started. Okay, when I say black, you might say white, or you might say dark. When I say black, you may say cat. So it's the association of one word to the other. Or when words come to mind when you say change. So many things come to the person's mind when change. Usually fear, anxiety. What we like you to do is to jot down 3 or 4 top words that pop into your mind when the word change comes about. Now compare your answers to these. Okay, the number 1 out of the 9 or 10 things that people have told us over the past 10 years or so, the number 1 thing is the fear of the unknown. When people cannot see the future, but they have a general understanding of what it's about, they can accept it and move forward. But fear of the unknown, people would rather stay the way things are right now, status quo, unless they're forced to do otherwise, unless some great traumatic event takes place, or the company that they're working with has to radically change, or in their life they're forced to change. People fear the unknown. Secondly, the loss of control or power in the new system. Whatever new system comes along, people fear. The number 2 reason people fear is the loss of power, the loss of control. As humans, we want to be in control. We want to stay in control of the situation as much as possible. Third is people are outside of their normal comfort zone. When people go out of the comfort zone, it makes it very, very difficult for them to to be confident, and very difficult for them, and they are afraid of it because they're not comfortable. The fourth area is nostalgia. They miss the good old days. Many good managers that we know today, they were capable of managing 20, 30 years ago, and they're living in the past. They're living nostalgia. Fifth is satisfaction with the present way of doing things. They just like the way things are going now. You say, why change? Everything's going fine. Customers are happy. We're doing well. Or I'm doing well, even if the company's not doing well. The other area is fear of failure in the new or loss of face. The fear of failure in the new situation that they're in. You may have mastered your current situation. Now you're in a new situation, and we fear we aren't going to succeed. The fear of failure. Or you might lose face. People might think less of you. New things mean more work. Generally, we have to unlearn and learn. We have to not only forget about what we've known before, but we have to take on new learnings, which means more work and more effort. Maybe we don't have the resources to make it happen. Perhaps our company's winging it and we're doing it on the fly. And so we fear that we begin a project, but we're going to run out of resources halfway through. Or there's no time to adjust. We just don't have the time. We're not nimble enough. There's too much uncertainty. So let's examine two types of change, okay? One is the continuous change, okay? This is the change that deals with incremental improvement. Think of this change as being small ripples around the outside of the shoreline. And the waves come in, there's a small incremental improvement, there's a change, okay? But it's not that dramatic, but it keeps happening over and over and over again. The second type of change is this dramatic discontinuous change. You take a step back, and this means breakthrough improvement. It's like the tsunami versus the ripple. And the whole shoreline has changed dramatically. And discontinuous change is what most organizations face today. This is our S-curve model on the PowerPoints that we're working with here. And basically what this is showing is that we have two types of change. Normally, continuous change might lead to discontinuous change. There's a lot of things over time that's contradicting one another during this process of going from continuous change to discontinuous. And the problem is many organizations are trying both of these types of change at the same time. Discontinuous, continuous, like waves and ripples affecting one another, crashing against each other. So managing both of these types of change is like changing. And here was Dr. Deming's favorite expression, the one that he had made up about, he loved car racing at one time, the early days of it. And he says, changing the tires on a car while it's still moving is like managing these both types of change together. So the car's moving, and all of a sudden you're trying to get out of the car and you're trying to change the tires, and it's just impossible to do. Okay, so we have various types of change models. We have, first of all, Lewin's is probably one of the older types of change models. We have McKinsey's model, the 7S model that's been very popular, was very popular about 5 to 10 years ago, and still popular in many areas. The third model is we have Kotter's 8-step or 7-step change model. There's various versions of it out there. There's the 8-step model, and there's the 7-step model. It's very intriguing. The fourth one is Bridges' transition model, and this one is reflective and is very close to Lewin's model and has the three basic stages of change wrapped throughout it. The fifth one is the Prosky model, and then the sixth one is the Adcock change management model. I use these six to illustrate that these six change models have been validated, they've been verified, they have hundreds of users that have used them to varying degrees of success. No one of them has been 100% successful, but they've all stood the test of time. So they've been successful in a wide variety of different industries, in a wide variety of different areas. And all these models, when you examine the underlying currents behind it, there's three pillars or three underlying forces. The first force is we need to unfreeze the organization. People have to make an active effort to overcome this resistance to change, and the organization has to be unfrozen. It's similar to a child when his personality, when a child grows the age of 7, the personality is pretty well set in stone, and then it's very hard to change a person once they're in their teens because their personality's been frozen. It's very similar with an organization. An organization gets frozen, and when it does, it's hard to change its personality. The second is a transition to a new stage, some type of a transition where the old is no longer and the new hasn't begun yet. There's various names for this, and we'll give it some terms a little bit later. Okay, and the third is where then we have to refreeze, and this is where you begin going into, as you're refreezing, the new visions, the faraway stage. This is where the visioning process comes in. So basically, there's more words on it. I just covered a highlight of it, but a typical change, first of all, let me ask you, does it get initiated, it gets begin, then it gets implemented, and then it ends, right? Is this, you're thinking, a change is, it starts, we initiate it, it gets implemented, we have to do something and make it happen, and then it ends, right? Okay, this is what our thinking is mostly about. Emotionally, I'm here to tell you that the whole thing happens backwards. Okay, instead of starting at the beginnings, which is in the right hand of our model here, you have to first begin in the endings. We have to train and teach people and help them how to let go. We can never enter a new stage, a new vision. Appreciative inquiry talks about think very positive about all the new things that are going to happen. Think vision. But the problem is we can't think vision if we're holding on to the past. So emotionally, the endings start first. Then we go into what we call this neutral zone. This after things have been unfrozen and before they're re-begun. There's this whole neutral zone, this whole transition zone, and then we get into the beginnings. Okay, so feelings don't operate on the same spectrum that structural change operates. Feelings don't operate the same way that the change masters would like it to operate. So grieving the loss of the old is the first. We have to help people grieve. Emotional pathways are part of what the new organizations are like. Organizations need to emote. They need to grieve. We need to help the people grieve the loss of the old. That's the first key. And that's the helping them to let go, and we'll cover some ways to do that. Then we have to help them through this neutral zone of confusion, where the old is no longer and the new hasn't yet come, where people have let go of the old as much as they can, but everything is now in play. The policies, the procedures, the changes, everything is not yet. And so leaders' job, management's job, the change manager's job is to help people through this neutral zone until they get into the new beginnings. And the beginnings are enrolling the people in the new way of buying in. So how do we get them engaged? How do we share the vision? Okay, so let's deal with the endings first. First of all, we have to compensate people somehow for their losses. We have to acknowledge that they're losing something whenever the old is put away, and we have to figure out as an organization, how do we compensate people for these losses? Secondly, we have to give people information and do it again and again and again and again. We have to keep giving them information that's well-structured, short tidbits of information, reinforcing each other. Third is we have to define what's over and what isn't. We have to create some boundaries. We have to help people see, okay, what isn't over versus what is over. What parts are we putting aside? What parts are we laying away? Then we have to mark the ending somehow, just like a funeral marks the ending of a loved one, and then it's time to move on. Here we have to symbolically mark the endings as organizations. And then we have to treat the past with respect. The mistake many organizations make is they try to disrespect the past and disrespect some of the people that had already been there, which is a big mistake because it erodes credibility. And then we have to let people take a piece of the old ways with them. Everybody wants to take a piece forward with them, something to remind them of the old ways. Find a way we can take a piece of the old ways. And then 6, show how endings ensure the continuity of what really matters. The ending, and as we enter the neutral zone now, organizations need to show people what really matters. What's ended, we mark the ending, okay, what can we allow, what are we bringing forward with us, and what really matters. Okay, so before we go into the neutral zone, let's talk about a few tools that can help. And in the area, many people have heard about Lean Six Sigma, especially the lean side of Six Sigma. It's gotten a very good reputation lately. A lot of organizations are very much interested in plugging the Lean Six Sigma tools into their change management efforts. So basically, the main idea is to help people assess their current situation in order to help them let go of the past. We need to assess what's currently going on in order to know what we can take forward, what should we leave behind. So there's some tools here. One is, the favorite tool is the breakthrough equation, which other people may know as y equals f of x plus epsilon. I've been using the breakthrough equation since 1992 as part of our Lean Six Sigma effort, before it was Lean and then it was Six Sigma. And the breakthrough equation was part of the effort and still is today. So it's a very powerful tool. Second tool, force field analysis. Kurt Lewin came up with that tool along the same time that he also had his change management and the change management freezing and unfreezing the organization. Force field analysis was the tool that helped him do that. A third tool is Porter's 5 forces matrix. Porter came up with these 5 forces that affect an organization. And part of his philosophy was that if you understand the interaction of the forces as well as the pressure of each force, we can begin to see how an organization can or can't respond. And generally, using Porter's thinking, it's not one of the forces here, it's the interaction of forces upon each other. Just like in taking a medicine, a single medicine may not be a problem. But if you've got multiple medicines and they're interacting with each other, that indeed can cause the problem. And that's similar to Porter's 5 forces. And then we have our old friend, the customer stakeholder analysis matrix. Now, part of the reason why that's interesting and important to help us with change management is we have to really know what our customers need and want, and what are their requirements. And often we don't do a good job of understanding customers' requirements and their needs and wants. So this analysis matrix helps us do that. Stakeholder analysis. That's a biggie. Understanding the stakeholders, identifying who the stakeholders are. Most organizations have multiple stakeholders, and any of the philosophies that you follow have anywhere from 5 to 8 stakeholders, of which customers are an important stakeholder. But the regulators are stakeholders, the banks are stakeholders. If you work for a publicly traded company, the stockholders are stakeholders. The board of directors can be stakeholders. So we have to analyze what the stakeholders need and want, and generally we have an organizational readiness map that can help us with this stakeholder analysis. And then we can develop from that strategies to move forward. So doing a stakeholder analysis, and there's much written on the subject, go out on the internet and do a quick Google, and you'll have thousands of hits within a minute. The key tool to look for there is an organizational readiness map. This is an example on our next PowerPoint here. If you take a look, this is a stakeholder analysis. This is a map, okay? And so we have stakeholders strongly against something, and you know, we have the names of the stakeholders and whether they're strongly against, moderately against, whether they're on the fence, whether they're neutral, whether they're moderately supportive, or whether they're strongly supportive. And the basic idea is to interpret the stakeholder map once you've done it and see, okay, do we have fairly moderate to strong support from the stakeholders on the right-hand side? If we do, how can we keep it there? Versus do we have weak support on the left-hand side? There's no right or wrong answers, but the stakeholder map can help us with that. We define the stakeholders. So here, in your table exercises, if you were doing this back in your organization and you were a change manager or a facilitator, one of the things you instruct your organizational folks to do is to break into teams. Okay, then you'd select a recorder or a spokesperson for the. So who's going to be the spokesperson for the team? And then there's 5 basic steps. You'd list and brainstorm your key stakeholders. You'd plot where they are in relationship to the desired one of the 5 silos on the stakeholder map. Then you'd say whether they're at a minimum level or what level are they. The reason and issues for the gap. When you identify the gaps, here's where you would get into what are some of the reasons for the gaps. And this helps you do the gap analysis, and then you'd plan some action steps and some with 2 key stakeholders. We're suggesting not to take action steps at one time with more than 2, because then the interaction of the stakeholders upon one another becomes too complex. So do 1 or 2 stakeholders at a time. This is a copy here in the next PowerPoint of the stakeholder analysis template for you. It's a take-back tool. Okay, so having talked about, okay, letting go and the need for letting go, let's just summarize that before we jump into the characteristics of the next phase, which is the neutral zone. People, by their nature, do not want to let go. They hold on to the past. And management doesn't do an effective enough job with helping them let go before they try to jump into the new beginnings, creating their shared vision. And that's almost always a mistake, because not only haven't the people learned to let go, but now nobody's helped them deal, or nobody's even helped management deal with this next phase, which can be treacherous and is called the neutral zone. And the neutral zone's a place where the old is no longer and the new hasn't begun yet. Anxiety rises, and as anxiety rises, motivation falls. The higher the anxiety, generally, the lower the motivation, no matter how good the change becomes. People feel disoriented. They self-doubt. They doubt one another as well as themselves. Okay? They miss more work days than at other times. This is an outcome indicator. If you say to yourself, well, how can we begin to measure this, Frank? One of the ways is through the outcome indicators. How many work days are people missing? If they're missing more work days than they have at other times, this is one of the characteristics that you have to deal with this neutral zone. Old weaknesses, long patched over or uncompensated for, reemerge. This is a key. The old things, the pillow returns to its previous shape. The minute you take your head off it, the pressure for change disappears. As long as your head's remained on the pillow, if it's a good pillow, the indentation remains. Once you take your head off the pillow returns to its old shape. The old habits reemerge, okay? People are overloaded. Signals are often mixed and low self-esteem. Many clients of ours, once we've taken the client on and they tell us, we made the mistake of adding to an overloaded workforce by not replacing the people that left. So as people left, they would then redistribute their work to an already overloaded workforce, because now you're in this neutral zone and everything's in play, which then causes more people to leave, and it becomes a downward spiral. People become polarized between those who want to go back to the old days versus those who don't want to go back to the old days, the old guard, the new guard, and this makes most organizations very, very vulnerable to attack. So how do we deal with it? Okay, you say, well, okay, Frank, I'll buy the fact that we've helped people let go, and now we're in this neutral zone, and now we're trying to figure it all out, and we're trying to help our managers help them. What do we do? Well, first of all, we need to protect the people from further changes while they're trying to regain the balance. The common mistake here is while people are already reeling from change, we hit them with more change. One change follows the other. It becomes a 1, 2, 3 punch. We have to review the policies and procedures and lean them out. We say, are they adequate to dealing with what's going on right now? Or are they confusing the fluidity of what we're trying to accomplish? It's the perfect time to go back to the policies and procedures, take a lean look at them and make them as lean and as close to the bone as possible. Strip them back, okay? Okay, don't set the people up for failure. Often, most management ignores this neutral zone. The people have let go, but they're not helping them through this neutral zone and keep their balance. It's setting them up for failure. And then find out what the supervisors and the managers need to learn. Okay, often it's a question of sitting down with each of them, talking to them, figuring out in this neutral zone, and then providing special training. Some call it hand-holding. I think it's more than that. This is really training. It's training where people need it the most, when they think that they may be in trouble. Okay, here's some tools to help us with this. One of the main all-purpose tools, and one of the ones I like the most, is process mapping. So as you've stripped the process down, people have let go, now we're entering this neutral zone, and now we're going to do the new beginnings. Okay, use the process mapping to identify and to understand where the process is changing, where the information flows are occurring. Capture the data that needs to be captured to answer and satisfy the customer's requirements. Create a shared need window and do an affinity diagram or a KJ analysis. And these are all useful tools that most of us have learned if we've gone through the process improvement training, or we've gone through Lean Six Sigma of some kind. Many of them are finding their way now into the change management toolkit. Here's our friend, the shared need window. Okay, and the shared need window looks at it from a pain and an opportunity point of view. It answers the key question: what's in it for me? WIFM. What's in it for me? What are the implications of not changing, in other words? What happens if I stay the same? And this is always the key question. Not do I want to change, but what happens if I don't change? What's the price I'm going to pay? And what can people do to move towards or away from failure? You want to help people enter the future, and the most thing we have to do is protect them from failure. So this shared need window is a nice tool to help us with that. Think of the change you're responsible for leading, back in your organization, back in your hometown, okay? And draft some key messages for each of those quadrants. What's the pain? 4 or 5 key messages. What pain are we be specific, be concrete. The pain describes the reason why we need to change. And then what's the opportunity for us in the current? And then what might the pain be in the future as we change, and then also the opportunity. Okay, encourage creativity. Creativity is the beginning of innovation. Innovation we define as making money from creativity. We don't make money from the creativity unless we bring it to market, unless we can operationalize it, unless we can make a product out of it in some way, or a service, or a program. Okay, but it starts with encouraging the creativity. This helps people through the neutral zone. If they can be created, then we come up with opportunities for others to do the same. Okay, step back, question the usual, come up with the new and creative solutions. So how can we temporarily fill the need here while we're creating the new beginnings? Encourage innovation. Encourage out-of-box thinking. The old thinking used to be the bright people got most of the glory. The enlightened corporations today are understanding that if a good person meets a bad process, the bad process always wins. If a good manager meets a bad system, the bad system always wins. So we're trying to encourage people to innovate and to improvise and to bring their fresh ideas out. The third thing is to look for opportunities to brainstorm new answers to old problems. Everybody's able to do some of the brainstorming. The act of brainstorming alone releases a lot of the tension. The act of brainstorming alone helps people move forward, move out of this neutral zone, and restrain the impulse to prematurely rush in and either close the issue or say, okay, enough is enough. Don't be negative in this stage. Encourage all sorts of creativity. How can we reinforce the beginnings phase? Now this is, we've gone through, we've trained people how to let go. We've helped them move through the neutral zone, okay? And now we're going to be in this phase of, okay, now we're going to create the shared vision. Now we're going to create the new beginning. So first of all, we have to acknowledge the change has been implemented. This is the first step, acknowledging the change has been implemented. Also celebrate the low-hanging fruit, the emerging successes, document them. Have people keep daily logs and daily journals and document some of the early successes, which can then feed on itself. Identify best practices and lessons learned, areas that have solved key problems or learned from each other. Identify, share the lessons learned, share them with each other. Finally, put control mechanisms into place so that we can assure the new changes become institutionalized. Sometimes this is called standardization. And the control mechanisms help us do the standardization. Some basic tools here. Many of us have been involved in a visioning process, and we've looked at visioning as far as creating the new beginnings. Okay, there's a lot of good text on visioning. Okay, the point here is don't start with visioning. Start with helping people to let go. Force field analysis is a useful tool. I mentioned that earlier. The Kano analysis. Dr. Kano's great teaching on how do you know what customers want before customers know they want it. He uses Canon sure-shot camera as his example. They weren't looking to invent the sure-shot camera. They were looking to stop blurred images on photographs. So they interpreted the data they had and came up with a new product. Okay, SCAMP is a useful tool. We've used hundreds of times. It's an acronym for substitute, change, adjust, modify, position and reposition, edit, and rearrange. And it has many different meanings, but it's a nice visioning tool, and also business case modeling along with quality function deployment. Point is, there's enough tools out there to help you with the visioning process once you're ready for it. So creating a vision for the future, we call it future pacing. Is it 12 months from now and the change has been spectacularly successful? If it is, what do you see, first of all? Envision the future. You've entered a spaceship, and you've now gone 12 months ahead, and now you've re-entered the same zone, the same geographical area, the same company. Okay, picture what you see. What do you hear? What are people talking about? What are the conversations that you hear them talking about in the halls? How do you feel about it? Half of this is the feeling side of it, the emotional side of it. And what does this suggest? What is happening to your customers? Are they being delighted? Why? What are some of the things that you're doing now in the future to help with the customers? What is happening to your fellow employees? Are they more motivated now than they have before? Has it been because of new jobs that have been created? Is the job design encouraging the creativity that we talked about? And what's happening to measures and metrics? The old equation here is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. If you can't measure change, you can't manage change. We need to have concrete measures and metrics to do that. So let's put the model into play. Okay, one of the simple ways to do it is let's take about 5 minutes to think about a significant change that you may have implemented and been involved in or experienced with in the past 2 or 3 years. And you had limited control or choice over the change. In other words, you had to do it. Okay. Using the 3 stages of the model we just discussed, evaluate the change through the lens of the 3 phases. Make notes about how you were thinking, feeling as you went through each of the 3 stages. A work-related example can be used, but it's not absolutely necessary. Put it into action. Go out and think about this in terms of the 3. So what are the 3 takeaways from this conversation? Jot down a couple of notes, okay? Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the emotional cycle of change. It usually starts with denial, okay? As we cycle through and productivity starts to dip, okay? Then resistance gets met. Finally, it reaches its low point. We then start exploring. People are inquisitive. They explore. They're looking for success. They're looking for the way out. Then we build commitment. This is the so-called emotional curve or the U-curve of change. So managing the transition, here we have in denial. People don't care. They're apathetic, or they're numb, or they're walking around. They have that zombie look. The thinking seems to be, this too shall pass if I can just ride it out. What you can do, let people know the change will happen. Explain what they can expect and what's possible and some ways they can adjust. Give them time to let things sink in, and then talk to them again about it. Give them a week. Give them 4 days. Give them 2 weeks. Let it sink in. Also, resistance. When they're in this resistance area, they're fighting you back. They're angry, challenging things. Okay? So here, they're saying things like their withdrawal from the team. I'm going to get off this team. I'm not going to participate in this anymore. It's not working. Okay? You have to first listen empathetically. Listen is more than waiting for your chance to speak. It's listening to where the employees are going. Listen, follow their conversations. Try to empathize with them. Acknowledge their feelings. Say, I understand what you're saying. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, but you can understand it. Be empathetic. Put yourself in their shoes. Empathetic projection. Project yourself into their shoes. How are they thinking? What are they saying? And don't try to talk people out of their feelings. You won't talk them out of it. They will talk themselves out of it, okay? Exploration helps do this. What are the symptoms here? They're in exploration. There's too many new ideas that are being generated. Too much of a good thing. Frustration. They have a lot to do now. They have trouble focusing. They're bouncing all over the place, okay? What you can do, focus priorities and provide much needed training. The average American organization spends 1/10 of 1% of the time available on budget for training. The excellent organizations, the ones that master change, spend 10%. 100 times what the average American organization spends, because they budget for it, they invest in it. And then finally, the commitment. Here are some of the symptoms. Teamwork. Everybody's acting on the same team, watching each other's back. Satisfaction. Employee satisfaction rises to heights 80, 90% and higher. Customer satisfaction also rises into the 90s and higher. There's a clear focus on planning. People are spending adequate amount of planning, investing in planning. The sign-me-up mentality. What you can do to help with this is set on your long-term goals. Create now your vision. The vision is the long-term goal, 5 to 7 years out. Okay, concentrate on building a team and validate and reward. Don't forget to validate and reward. Some additional thoughts. Okay, anyone at any given time, different people are in different quadrants of the change circle, the change U curve. Different people are, not everybody's in the same quadrant at the same time. So you have to account for that. Different people are in the first quadrant, the second, the third, and the fourth. You have to help them manage through it no matter which quadrant they're in. Okay, and what are the implications of these thoughts for you as a change leader? Each of you have to take some of these thoughts seriously and take them to heart. Here are the change management principles we'd like you to take away from this. Okay, first of all, at all times involve and agree support from people within the system, the environment. Get people to agree on supporting the culture, relationships, behaviors. Understand where you are now, the organization at the moment. Where are you in this whole change quadrant? Where are you? Are you at the helping people let go? Are you in the establishing the transitions and help them through the transitions, creating the new beginnings? Understand where you want to be, when, why, and what the measures will be. Plan development towards the item number 3 above in appropriate measurable stages. You want to have chunks of time. Break it up into what can we do in the next week, the next 2 weeks, the next month, the next 2 months. Communicate, communicate, communicate. And understand that changing the culture is at the heart of whatever change management programs exist. If you don't change the culture, the organization returns to its previous shape over and over and over again. So you have to change the culture in order to help make it stick. Okay, here's a couple of other tools. You can use a sponsored checklist for this. Stakeholder analysis. I mentioned the future pacing, a communication plan, many different types of tools. Okay, let's talk about some of the other tools in this toolbox when leading and managing change. First of all, we have this tool called the Sponsor Checklist, and we'll cover this in some detail. Synetics. This is a very complicated but powerful tool for those that have the heart to get into it. No two people kind of agree on what this tool is, but we'll be covering this in our new book on creativity, Jim Harrington and I. Synetics is a very powerful tool. and one that you could think about applying. Stakeholder analysis, very simple tool used by thousands of organizations effectively. Future pacing, you already talked about that. Communication plan, I'll cover some of the details on establishing a good communication plan. The reason is that it's often always noticeably missing. And then appreciative inquiry. We have this whole AI concept of appreciative inquiry and what that means for organizations. There's been a lot of speculation on that lately. Okay, so let's identify a sponsor. Who cares passionately about the change that has to happen? Who can remove the obstacles, break down the barriers? Who has the resources to make this happen? Whose performance objectives and incentive are most heavily impacted by the particular change? They're an ideal candidates for the sponsor. So what the questions to ask yourself is, what changes are you responsible for leading within your organization, and how well would you score? Okay, communication plan, most noticeable by its absence. Very few organizations have good communication plans. It's an important part of the change management plan. Okay, why? One is it keeps key stakeholders informed of the progress. Among any other reason, this is the single biggest reason, the stakeholders need to be kept in the loop. Not with a lot of detail, but with small thumbnail sketches on what's happening, what does it mean to me, how is it affecting the organization. It also enables stakeholders to plan their resource allocations, okay, the people involved in the change, so they can resource it out. It assists in aligning the project with other initiatives. Think of it like dropping stones in the water, and the ripple from one stone, another stone gets dropped in. The ripples from that, a third stone gets dropped in the water, and the interaction between all these ripples now start crashing against each other. So the communication plan helps us with these ripples and helps us to see all the interactions. It also creates buy-in and support for the decision and helps to prevent misunderstandings when they occur. So the communication plan, most of the experts agree that if you do no other part of the model well, doing the communication plan well becomes like the butterfly effect. If you do this well, 85% of all the results should come out as being positive. It's that powerful. So what's the objectives? First of all, we have to lay out what do we want the recipients to know, feel, and do. Those are the three areas. What do we want them to know? Not too much, not too little. What's the right amount? What do we want them to feel? How do we want them to come away from this? What feeling should they have? And what do we want them to do? What specific task, what one thing in this communication missive should each person come away from it knowing that this is one thing that I'm going to do? Who is involved? Who needs to receive what content? Don't overload it. This has to be lean communications, not sending all communications to everyone. So who needs to receive what? Delivered in what format? Is it on the internet? Is it bulletin boards? Is it cameras? Is it on TV throughout the company? Is it in newsletters? And delivered in what format? In what frequency? Daily may be too often, and monthly may not be enough. So the frequency has to be spelled out. Then you develop a plan. So this again, answer these questions to what you've learned during this training session, okay? Making change last. How can you increase the changes that will stick once it's implemented? This is heavily involved in all these programs and all these project management things, and once all the changes have been implemented, how do we make it stick? How do we make it last once it's implemented? And that's one of the keys. That's what the communication plan can help us summarize and do. So here's leadership's role. Communicate the vision and anticipate resistance. Know that resistance will happen. All of those 6 change management models have at their central spot anticipating and dealing with resistance. Do not compromise on the purpose and direction, but be patient and flexible on this. Patience, this is the single biggest problem. Management, especially CEOs, don't have the patience. They're at the top of the mountain, they see the finish line, they see the employees, they start wondering what's taking them so long because they see it clearly. Why doesn't everyone else see it as clearly as they do? This is the biggest problem with a lot of C-level executives that I've dealt with over the years, the lack of patience. Preserve the best of what you already do well. Change only what needs to be changed. Establish the benefits of the new system, the what's in it for me. Everybody has part of the benefit of the new system. Seek participation and light many fires, but maintain consistency among them. Someone has to be the voice of consistency, the voice of reason. Make as much of this standardized within the different operating areas as possible. Track, measure, and reward new behaviors. Story of Shamu the whale. Shamu's the famous whale that jumps about 7, 8 feet out of the water. Shamu wasn't born jumping out of the water. Shamu was born as any ordinary whale, and then they had in the bottom of this pool a rope, and they would rise the rope up, and every time Shamu went over the rope, they fed Shamu the fish. And then Shamu actually one day jumped out of the water, and they fed Shamu more fish, and Shamu got up as high as its body weight, the physics of the body weight would allow, about 7.5 feet out of the water. It was a reinforced behavior over time. Track, measure, and reward these new behaviors. And then honor the past, but model the future. We don't want to hold on to the past. We honor it, put it to bed, put it where it belongs, and then model the future. This is a simple model for managing complex change. It's a model it's a change checklist. Okay, the facilitators in the Harrington Institute can provide the checklist. They can provide an Excel-based version of this that's very powerful for you. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. So hopefully, number one, each of you have learned some of the reasons that managing change is so challenging. Starting with the number one reason, we forget about letting go and we forget about the neutral zone. Reviewing some of the dynamics that underlie the change process, and we did that. Examine some of the change management models. We took a look at the common elements that go through all 6 models, and then some specifics that you can do. Okay, if you have any questions and issues, we'll be more than happy. And Rick, if you want to ask the questions and the polling, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Now, I'll be back in just a moment to wrap up our presentation. And now, as they say, all good things must come to an end. I would like to personally thank all of our speakers today for their great presentations. It's just been an incredible day. Just a quick note for everyone on the close of the webcast. You know, I didn't sleep a wink last night because we've been so lucky here at the Harrington Group. We have had so many great revolutionary products and services for many decades. But today, with the launch of our new consulting group, academy, and business intelligence system, Harrington Group International will continue to be the leader in process improvement and total improvement management. Here's a quote from Mr. Steve Covey. The best way to predict the future is to create it. That's what you have, our commitment here at Harrington Group International, to keep creating the future for many decades to come. And as a side note, Harrington Group International will be at the annual ASQ Quality Conference in Indianapolis, Indiana, from May 6th through 8th. I personally invite you all to stop by and see us. And finally, with every new beginning, there is often something that comes to an end. Today I want to make my final announcement. My father, Rick Harrington Sr., whom I started my business career with more than 2 decades ago, is retiring. I would like to publicly thank my father for the foundation he created for my new companies and for the entrepreneurial spirit he embedded deep inside me. Indeed, deep inside my DNA, a deep and abiding entrepreneurial sense, starting from when I was just a young man. Thanks, Dad. It's been great working with you for all these years. And thanks to everybody for coming to the Harrington Group International First Annual Conference. We look forward to seeing you again, and have a great day.
We're frequently asked to come in and help an organization establish an ISO system, whether it's environmental or whether it's quality or whether it's safety, and asked to help them develop a quality manual or a safety manual. We don't like to do that. We think that's the wrong thing to do. We think that what you need to do is have an operating manual where safety and quality is all tied in with the way you operate. And what we actually do is we'll come in and develop a complete operating manual that will bring everything together so that we lace in the quality system, the environmental system, and the safety system into everything we do. So you have good procedures that you go to one central spot for the total operations instead of having separate operations manuals in every individual type of activity. That's to me a very important facet, that you bring quality into the operation rather than having it separated from the operation. Challenge you, if you've had a problem you've been working on for a year and you haven't been able to solve it, give us 2 weeks. We have a technology that will show you how to solve those most difficult problems, the ones that bother you year after year after year, and get a quick answer to it. Give us a chance. I'll give you a miracle.